Hey guys, welcome back. So this is gonna be a pretty interesting video because I am known by many names, and one of which is
The greatest Honkai Star Rail tourist that has ever lived.
D. And the reason why I wanted to go through specifically for this Divergent Universe update is because if you take a look into the index right here, it actually shows you a bunch of potentially very interesting synergies of what you might expect going forward in future versions of HSR. This is not leakers, but we have seen very similar things happening in previous DUs, previous events. So for example, there was the DU patch back in Emporius. You could see Hycelen's buff updates signaling that she was gonna be a DOT. You could also see Saridra as well as many others. And now we have a very interesting DU update as a whole. I am not too interested as to how this DU is gonna be working because I am not really gonna be all up in there for the gameplay, but I am way more interested as to what are the potential future of our units in HSR, right? So just to kind of take a look again, most of the stuff I'm just going to skip through. The link will be provided in the description below if you want to take a look for yourself. But generally speaking, I'll be focusing on the rare things, right? The rare things. So one very important update is that, yes, AHA is no longer for full auto attacks. All right, AHA is now officially for AHA, where they are going to be getting your elation damage as well as 200 punchlines, which is going to be in tandem of what is to come in the elation flagship as a whole. Now, besides AHA, this is not a first time thing because a very similar thing happened for Remembrance as well. All right, way back in my days, back in version 1, back in version 2 even, right, to a certain extent, Remembrance was not known for Mimo sprites. Remembrance was known for the freeze, right? Which technically it still is, right? It still is. It is still a freeze mechanic, but nowadays the Remembrance blessings have completely transformed into the Mimemis, right? Into the Mimemis. So with that out of the way, I will just take a look at namely a couple of interesting things that I thought was pretty interesting. First of which, who is this? Because we do have a quantum damage and a 1000% break effect with quantum. Now, bro is gonna be from the Path of Harmony, and I am very interested to see if there might be. Oh, they made this entire path for Shui. Yeah, they definitely made this entire path for Shui. But I am very interested to see if in future versions, could we get a 5-star quantum break EPS? Which might also be the reason why they wanted to buff which is also why they wanted to buff Firefly, because there might be a version 4 quantum break DPS, right? So that is pretty much it. For the mask portion right here, it is a brand new set of mechanics, which they basically changed the old ways of getting your DU different blessings. For example, the Fortune Cat Mask was a very popular DU strategy back then, where you could use the infinite shop refresh to get infinite money. Alright, and then they basically condense it into this singular mask over here. We also have a bunch of things like the domain for the additional beacons. This is the one with the instant kill mechanic, which might be working very well with Scylla. And then the Uma Musume is going to give you a bunch of this. So I won't be talking about the masks themselves that much, but they have every single one of the effects right here, which I can't really figure out exactly before we play for ourselves, especially with the deck building portion. So we're just going to move on. Now, this is the most important thing. For Remembrance itself is not going to be too big of a difference because they're still generally sticking with the Mimo Sprites mechanics. So, and we already finished up the entirety of Mimo Sprite because that was version 3. So I'm just going to be moving on from Mimi. For Nihility, one thing I noticed for Nihility is that they are still focusing their buffs and effects on DOT. Right, right, for DOT, and they are not appearing to focus for crit DOT DPS, specifically Acheron, which might signal to me as a player that they have a higher sense of priority for DOT DPS in Nihility instead of crit DPS in Nihility. Aside from the 3 big buffs, we also have a lot of their actual debuffs, right? So these are the blue ones especially. They are gonna be actual debuffs, but they are still tying around DOT as a whole. So, and then what to do? Iriwadi. Okay, Hunt has a minor update, which is this thing called the Reverse Critical Boost. And I have no idea what the hell is a reverse critical boost, because back in my days, the 300 blessings, this used to be critical boost. Alright, this used to be critical boost. We still have the original 100% action value advance, but I believe this was killed last time, but I might be mistaken. We do have a little bit here. Increased damage by 50% for 2 turns, and then this is a brand new thing where it will increase your original damage multiplier based on the number of attacks for the target. So that is honestly a little bit interesting as well. Other than that, it's going to be a lot of crit related items tied to Hunt as a whole. And I believe this might hint a little bit of ties with your follow-up attackers. So they killed follow-up attackers in Elation because now this is going to be purely based on AHA. And then they moved the follow-up attack mechanics to Hunt itself, which is probably also why Asheville as a unit is a Hunt follow-up attack DPS, and as early as it's coming next Wednesday, so we'll see how that is gonna be cooking up in the future. Destruction, I remember there was this thing called the one where it shares damage, and I know that I shouldn't take that last time because if you took the one that shares damage for the rest of the team, you just die instantly from the fatty bomb that jumps up and kills you in one shot. I'm not sure if it's gonna be the same thing. Okay, they actually changed the name. Okay, so there's no more of that the split damage thingy anymore. So we do have this bazaar mechanic. Oh wait, it is. Oh, it is, yeah. The damage taken is distributed amongst all allies. Yep, that's the one. And then if you took this, if there was this sumo guy, if it jumped up, you die immediately in-game. Other than that, we have a lot of bazaar damage, some shield effects, over healing, crit rate. This is the GOAT. Alright, Force Jump. I remember back in my, even like the first day of playing as you, Force Jump was pretty much the one that you want for the solo as you clear. So absolutely insane blessing. And then not too big of a change as a whole. So let's move on into the big boy. And that is Elation. Elation. So Elation is the one that has a massive update because it is now no longer based on follow-up attacks. It is now purely for Elation. And the reason why this is very interesting is because you can see some potential where they might be taking the Elation Path going forward for future team comps. So for example, right here, right? 50 AV, the speed of neutral combat events, all allies and their summons. And their summons increase by 1. Summons. The exact summon that might be happening for even Nisia's giant ass fox. The summons, which also might be a thing with the everlasting dream girl, because that effect was for Mimo sprites. So very interesting choice of words over here, where we might be seeing Elation summons. And then on top of that, if there is gonna be a summon, then could that said summon work with Casteris, work with Cyrene. Who knows? Who knows? And then the second one is pretty much gonna be 5 punchline and team-wide ally 60% crit damage, which seems to be signaling, you know, more punchline generation, and everyone in the mounts is probably gonna be a crit DPS, so there's gonna be that. Then this is all-type res pen and additional elation by 20% at these respective thresholds, which means a grand total is going to be a 100% elation buff when you reach 500 punchlines. Very, very nice. Other than that, a lot of crit related buffs, right? A lot of speed buffs, right? For your dealers, right? Speed buffs, crit buffs, defense ignore as well. So we have a lot of these other factors, and then we do have some additional punchlines. Now, one thing I've noticed is that they also seem to hint quite a bit on your speed. So Elation seems to kind of want a little bit of everything. You want crit, you want speed. There are ties of defense ignore, and there are also res pen, right? And why this is also interesting is because out of all these things here, right? Out of all these blessings here, notice something. There's one thing in which the Elation Path doesn't really buff, and that is an additional aha instance. Because we do have buffs for punchline, we do have buffs for speed, and more speed is directly equivalent to faster ahas. But there really isn't really a specific blessing to give you an additional aha instance. And the only unit that can do that is Smelly Armpits, right? So that is gonna be the elation thingies. I think propagation didn't really change by that much. It's still gonna be skill points. Erudition also same. You can give this for Acheron, and then Bronya buffs. Very, very good. Very, very nice. Now moving on into the Curios. I think nothing really changed too much, so I just skip through. And lastly, for the Wader Curios, the only thing that I think was pretty interesting is that your Hunt is gonna be dealing additional 30% damage. A couple of the interesting things. Okay, I'm just gonna be completely honest. Maybe they changed, maybe they didn't. But MrPokke is not known for his DU gameplay. So to be completely honest, I have no fucking idea what the hell they do.
The greatest Honkai Star Rail tourist that has ever lived.
Okay, I know the teeth though, right? The teeth, I wrote the OG teeth, right? Back in, I know the teeth, right? Additional crit damage buff and all. So some of them I do know, right? Back in my days. But I'll be looking forward to see how this is gonna be shaping for the future of Elation, mainly with this path right here. So let me think what does chat. Let me think what does chat think in the comments below. Word of the day is gonna be Mr. D. You join to us, go use code POKE for 10% off game subs. All of it. See you guys next time. Thank you.